Hasbro internal investigation reports regarding the incident. Date of incident, September 25th, 2010. Time of incident, 12 p.m. Location of incident, Beverly Center Mall, Los Angeles, California. Meet the My Little Pony characters event. Persons involved, Catherine Wilson, missing. Person writing the report, Donna Nixon, Hasbro HR Legal. Summary of the incident. On Saturday, September 25th, 2010, at the Beverly Center in Los Angeles, California, Hasbro Marketing had prepared for a meet and greet of My Little Pony characters in promotion of their October 10th, 2010 premiere. 6 actors and actresses were hired to be in costume for the event. The meet and greet was supposed to last from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. in the afternoon, followed by another event the next day. After the incident, all future events have been canceled. 5 of the 6 main characters exited the dressing room and proceeded to the stage, except for Fluttershy, who was played by Catherine Wilson. She was the last to exit the dressing room. Problems arose from the start that included an unusual odor and the assault of several guests. 911 was called at one point after the actress was escorted from the stage. She was hospitalized shortly thereafter. See Daryl Castle's attached witness report. On Saturday, September 25th, 2010, I, Daryl Castle, was tasked with escorting the characters out of their dressing room onto the stage at the Beverly Center Mall. Miss Catherine Wilson, the actress hired to play Fluttershy, was the last to arrive on stage. Already it was apparent that something was wrong. Miss Wilson appeared to be intoxicated. She was walking in an abnormal way and unable to travel in a straight line. When asked if she was okay, she merely nodded and proceeded forward. I also noted that her costume was filthy. Dark stains were all over the Fluttershy costume, with her eyes blacked out. There was a strange smell emanating from the inside. At first, it smelled like bile, and when her legs briefly collapsed from under her, they seemed squishy. Once again, I asked Miss Wilson if she was able to continue. Once again, she nodded, insisting that she would be able to perform her duties. I let her go on stage and called wardrobe for a spare Fluttershy costume we had in storage for emergencies to be brought out to her to change into after the first set. When they entered the stage set up for the meet and greet, all the characters went to their preset locations, except for Miss Wilson, who continued to act in a very strange way. She refused to stay in her area and kept moving around into the other character locations. More noticeably was how she interacted with the kids. Most of the children in attendance wanted nothing to do with the Fluttershy character. They constantly shielded away from Miss Wilson when she approached them. Some of the younger ones began to cry hysterically when she got close to them. None of the other characters had this problem, though, as there were reasonably long lines for the other 5. When a few of the children actually got the nerve up to approach Fluttershy and pose for a picture, Miss Wilson started to act even stranger. She would grab them and hold them in a possessive manner. She would then begin to act like she was going to devour said child, opening the costume's mouth wide enough for her to potentially swallow said kid. At which point, the child would begin to cry, and I would have to drag the child away from her back to their parents. At this point, I need to point out the smell from the Fluttershy costume that had gotten even stronger and more noticeable. It now wasn't so much the bile as it was the smell of the rotting meat. It was quite strong, with guests visibly retching whenever she got close enough. In one incident, Fluttershy, or Miss Wilson, was clearly upset that a little girl refused to get close to her when she avoided Fluttershy and walked back to her parents. Fluttershy proceeded to follow her out from the stage and onto the floor, still with a strange walk, and visibly tried to force the child back onto the stage. It was apparent that the little girl was frightened by Miss Wilson's actions. It was then that I approached the actress. I placed my hand on her shoulder and attempted to direct her back onto the stage. When I did so, I noticed the costume was squishy. It was as if there wasn't anything solid in the costume. Whatever it was that Miss Wilson put into her Fluttershy costume, It leaked through the fabric and onto my hand as I directed her towards the stage. It was black, cold, and stung on contact. At this point, I radioed security and had them escort the other actors to the dressing room, and called 911 and the hazmat team to deal with the potentially dangerous substance that was leaking from the costume. The longer I stayed with Miss Wilson, Fluttershy, I felt uneasy. It was as if a viscera of pure rage began to emanate from the costume. She was beginning to terrify me. Even so, I stayed with her, keeping her separate from the other actors until the last one had entered the dressing room. When the last actor entered the dressing room, I asked one of the security guards, Roger Hesteld, to keep an eye on Miss Wilson while I checked on the other actors. Upon entering the dressing room, I noticed two of the Beverly Center Mall maintenance workers trying to open the door to the mop room. Initially, I paid them no mind and asked the actors if they had noticed anything bizarre about Miss Wilson before they had changed into their costumes. They said that Miss Wilson was already in the costume when they entered. It was at this point that the mall manager entered the dressing room to unlock the mop room. When he did and opened the door, he screamed, "Jesus," which caught my attention. I ran to the mop room, and inside was Miss Wilson. Naked and bleeding from her right hand, 4 of her fingernails missing from scratching her hand across the wall. In her own blood, she had written on the wall, "There are too many Fluttershies, they won't let me breathe. There are too many Fluttershies, they won't let me think. The Fluttershies hate me, the Fluttershies hate me, the Fluttershies are laughing at me." And after that, the words became incomprehensible to read. It was then that we heard the scream come from the hallway. It was Hastel. His scream was followed by another scream of several actors who had run to the door to see what was going on, and were now fully retreated from the doorway. I quickly made my way to the hallway where I gagged at both what I saw and smelled. Lying in the hallway was the lower half of Hastel. It was almost as if his upper torso had been melted away. Next to him lay the stained and discarded Fluttershy costume. The putrid smell of rotten death quickly enveloped the hallway, and I ordered an evacuation. Once outside, we met with the paramedics who treated me for minor burns on my hand where the black goo had touched. Miss Wilson, who was babbling incoherently, was taken to the hospital for treatment and observation. Continuation of main report. We agree with Mr. Castle's initial assumption that Mrs. Catherine Wilson had taken some illegal drugs and was intoxicated. We believe that it was a type of airborne psychotropic drug that ultimately affected her the most severely, and everyone else in the mall as well, but to a much lesser degree, causing hallucinations. We believe that Miss Wilson had arrived early and released said drug while in the mop closet and changed into her costume. By the time the others arrived on the scene, the toxin had permeated in the air within the mall. Due to Miss Wilson's longer exposure to it, her reaction was much more severe. How she wound up in the closet was questionable. We assume that perhaps the others had simply not noticed her locking herself in it, and were beginning to suffer the effects of the drug. This would explain the lack of the previously mentioned body of security guard Roger Hestel, and the lack of black fluid at the scene. The suit, which did smell awful, was incinerated at the close of the initial investigation. Miss Catherine Wilson, who was committed to Brotham's Memorial Hospital Psychiatric Wing, disappeared 2 weeks after the fact. Federal and local authorities have been informed, and she appears to be on the no-fly list as we speak. We do not expect to hear from her again, however, we have told security to keep their eyes open for her. Addendum. It is unknown at this time who was responsible for inflating all those yellow balloons with pink butterflies and rabbit designs in the room of Miss Wilson. Nor is it clear who left the Fluttershy doll with its eyes blacked out in her room as well. We will have to conduct an internal investigation to see who might be responsible for such actions, and speak to our manufacturers in China. These dolls aren't supposed to be on the market yet, and the fact that one of them showed up in a mental hospital is clearly a violation of our marketing and product policies. When found, the employee or employees should be terminated immediately to prevent further violations.